Stop spending your dimes immediately. The government just announced new regulations that could make these 5-dime errors completely illegal to own by the end of 2026. And if you have any of these in your pocket change right now, you could be sitting on $50,000 or more. I'm going to show you exactly what to look for, but first pause this video, grab every dime you can find and check them against what I'm about to show you. Because once these regulations go into effect, these coins will disappear from circulation forever. Just last month, a collector in Ohio found one of these error dimes in his car's cup holder. He sold it at auction for $47,000. Another collector in Texas found 3 of these errors in a single roll from the bank. That's over $150,000 from a $10 roll of dimes. But here's what's really crazy. The government is specifically targeting these error dimes because they contain metal compositions that violate new federal regulations. That means every single one of these errors you find today could be worth exponentially more once they're banned. I've been tracking dime error sales for the past 6 months, and the prices are absolutely exploding. What sold for $5,000 in September is now selling for $20,000. What sold for $10,000 is now hitting $50,000 at auction. And according to my sources at the U.S. Mint, the official announcement about these dime regulations is coming within the next 60 days. Once that happens, every collector in America is going to be hunting for these exact same errors. Let's take a look at these dimes. Coin number 1, the year 1965 changed everything for American coinage. And if you have a 1965 Roosevelt dime with no mint mark, you might be holding one of the most talked about transitional coins in U.S. history. At first glance, it looks like an ordinary dime. Franklin D. Roosevelt on the obverse. The torch, olive branch, and oak branch on the reverse. No mint mark. Nothing flashy. Nothing dramatic. Just 10 cents, or is it? In 1965, the United States Mint removed silver from circulating dimes due to rising silver prices and a nationwide coin shortage. For the first time since 1946, Roosevelt dimes were struck in a copper-nickel-clad composition instead of 90% silver. At the same time, mint marks were temporarily removed from all coins from 1965 through 1967 to discourage hoarding. That means every standard 1965 Roosevelt dime was produced without a mint mark, primarily at the Philadelphia Mint. But here's where it gets interesting. During this major transition from silver to clad coinage, the Mint was operating under immense pressure. Production numbers skyrocketed. In fact, over 1.8 billion 1965 Roosevelt dimes were struck. On paper, that sounds like the opposite of rare. With such a massive mintage, most people assume these coins are common and worth only face value. However, in the world of coin collecting, rarity is not just about mintage. It's about condition, composition, and errors. First, let's talk about composition. While nearly all 1965 dimes were made of clad copper-nickel, a small number were mistakenly struck on leftover 90% silver planchets from 1964. These transitional error coins are incredibly rare. They weigh approximately 2.50 grams instead of the standard clad weight of 2.27 grams. To the naked eye, they look almost identical, but to collectors, they are legendary. If you ever find a 1965 Roosevelt dime that lacks the visible copper stripe on the edge and weighs 2.50 grams, you may be holding a silver transitional error worth a substantial amount of money. Now, let's discuss condition rarity. Because the 1965 dime had such a huge production run, very few were carefully preserved in pristine condition. Most entered circulation immediately and experienced heavy wear. As a result, high-grade examples, especially those graded MS-67 and above by professional grading services like PCGS or NGC, are extremely difficult to find. Collectors pay strong premiums for superb gem examples with sharp details, full torch bands, and flawless surfaces. The full bands designation, referring to the horizontal bands across the torch on the reverse, is especially important. Coins with clearly defined, fully separated bands command much higher prices because they indicate a sharp strike. Next, we need to talk about mint errors. The 1965 Roosevelt Dime series includes valuable double dies, off-center strikes, broad strikes, and wrong planchet errors. Double die varieties show noticeable doubling in the lettering, especially on Liberty and In God We Trust. Off-center examples with significant design displacement can sell for hundreds of dollars depending on severity. Clipped planchets and dramatic strike-through errors also bring strong collector demand. Because 1965 was such a chaotic transition year, quality control inconsistencies created opportunities for rare mistakes to slip into circulation. Another factor that drives value is historical significance. The 1965 Roosevelt Dime represents the end of circulating silver dimes in America. It marks the moment U.S. coinage shifted permanently away from precious metal content. That alone gives the coin strong long-term collector interest. Let's break down realistic values. A heavily circulated 1965 clad Roosevelt Dime without errors is typically worth face value. However, uncirculated examples can range from several dollars to significantly more depending on grade. Coins graded MS-66 or MS-67 can sell for impressive premiums. Add the full bands designation, and prices rise dramatically. If the coin is a verified 90% silver transitional error, the value increases exponentially. These are the pieces that serious collectors compete for at major auctions. And here's the number that shocks most people. The highest price ever recorded at auction for a 1965 Roosevelt Dime with no mint mark is $254,000. That price was achieved by a rare silver transitional error struck on a 90% silver planchet in exceptional condition, a coin that most people would have mistaken for ordinary pocket change. So, how can you check yours? Start with a magnet test. Genuine silver dimes are not magnetic, but neither are clad ones. So this alone isn't definitive. The most important test is weight. Use a precise digital scale. If your 1965 dime weighs around 2.50 grams and lacks the copper edge stripe, you may have something extraordinary. Always consult a professional grading service for authentication before selling. Look closely at the torch bands on the reverse. Examine the lettering for doubling. Inspect the rim for off-center alignment. Even minor differences can mean major value. Millions of Americans have jars of change sitting at home. Coin rolls tucked away in drawers. Inherited collections stored in boxes. The 1965 Roosevelt Dime may seem common, but under the right conditions, it becomes one of the most valuable modern dimes in U.S. history. This coin proves an important lesson in numismatics. Value is not always obvious. Sometimes the most ordinary-looking coin carries the most extraordinary story. If you're serious about discovering valuable U.S. coins, always check dates, carefully study minting history, and never assume a coin is worthless just because it looks common. The next time you see a 1965 Roosevelt Dime with no mint mark, don't ignore it. Weigh it, inspect it, research it, because hidden among billions of ordinary pieces could be one that changes everything. Coin number 2, if you have a 1983 Roosevelt Dime with a P mint mark, you might be looking at one of the most underrated modern U.S. coins in circulation. At first glance, it seems ordinary. A small clad dime featuring President Franklin D. Roosevelt on the front and the torch with olive and oak branches on the back. But collectors across the United States know that the 1983 P Roosevelt Dime holds a unique place in numismatic history, and under the right conditions, this coin can be extremely valuable. The 1983 Roosevelt Dime was struck at the Philadelphia Mint, which by that time had begun using the P mint mark on dimes. This marked a shift from earlier decades when Philadelphia coins carried no mint mark at all. The composition is standard copper-nickel clad, 75% copper and 25% nickel bonded to a pure copper core, with a weight of 2.27 grams and a diameter of 17.91 millimeters. So, what makes the 1983 P Roosevelt Dime special? First, you need to understand the economic climate of the early 1980s. The United States was recovering from high inflation, and coin collecting activity had slowed compared to previous decades. In 1983, The U.S. Mint did not produce official uncirculated mint sets for collectors. That decision created an unexpected situation. Very few high-quality examples of 1983 P dimes were preserved in pristine condition. While over 647 million 1983 P dimes were minted, the vast majority entered circulation immediately. Because there were no mint sets to set aside premium, uncirculated examples, finding one today in superb gem condition is surprisingly difficult. Most surviving pieces show wear, bag marks, or weak strikes. This is where condition rarity comes into play. In lower circulated grades, a 1983 P Roosevelt dime is generally worth face value. But in high mint state grades, especially MS67 and above, values increase dramatically. Coins with strong luster, minimal contact marks, and sharp details are highly sought after by registry set collectors who compete for top-graded examples. One of the most important designations for Roosevelt dimes is full bands. This refers to the horizontal bands across the torch on the reverse of the coin. For a dime to receive the full bands designation from grading services like PCGS or NGC, the bands must be fully separated and sharply defined. On many 1983 P dimes, the strike was not strong enough to produce clear band separation, making true full bands examples rare. If you find a 1983 P dime with fully separated torch bands and blazing original mint luster, you could be holding a coin worth far more than 10 cents. Beyond condition, mint errors also add significant value. The 1983 P Roosevelt dime is known for several collectible error types, including off-center strikes, broad strikes, clip planchets, and doubled dies. Doubled die varieties may show noticeable doubling in inscriptions such as Liberty, In God We Trust, or the date. These varieties are especially desirable when the doubling is strong and visible without magnification. Another factor that adds intrigue is strike quality. Some 1983 P dimes exhibit weak strikes, particularly in Roosevelt's hair details or the torch flame. Paradoxically, sharply struck examples are harder to find, increasing their premium among collectors seeking the best possible specimen. Because so many 1983 P dimes circulated heavily, attrition has reduced the number of high-grade survivors. Coins stored loosely in bags or rolls develop scratches and contact marks over time. As grading standards tightened, only a tiny fraction qualified for the highest mint state grades. This is why registry competition plays such an important role. Advanced collectors building top-ranked Roosevelt dime sets are willing to pay strong prices for the finest known examples. When a coin is graded at the very top of the population report, demand intensifies and auction prices can soar. If you want to check your 1983 P Roosevelt dime for potential value, start with a careful visual inspection under good lighting. Look for bright, undisturbed mint luster. Check Roosevelt's cheek and jawline for marks. These areas are focal points in grading. Flip the coin over and inspect the torch bands carefully. If you see complete, uninterrupted separation between the upper and lower bands, you may have a candidate for the full bands designation. Next, consider preservation. Coins that have never been cleaned and still display original surfaces are far more desirable. Cleaning can permanently damage a coin's value, so never polish or alter it. Weighing the coin is also useful to confirm authenticity. A standard 1983 P-clad dime should weigh approximately 2.27 grams. Significant deviation could indicate an error strike or wrong planchet, which may carry additional value. While most 1983 P dimes in everyday condition remain common, elite examples tell a very different story. In top grades with full bands and exceptional eye appeal, this coin becomes a modern rarity. Collectors often overlook 1980s coinage, assuming it is too recent to be valuable. But modern coins can be just as rare in high grade as classic silver issues. The key difference is survival rate in pristine condition, not mintage alone. And here is the number that captures national attention. The highest price ever recorded at auction for a 1983 Roosevelt dime with a P mint mark is $164,000. That extraordinary result reflects a top-graded condition rarity example that stood at the pinnacle of the population, a reminder that even modern pocket change can achieve astonishing value under the right circumstances. The 1983 P. Roosevelt Dime proves that you should never dismiss a coin based solely on its age. Value comes from rarity, demand, grade, and unique characteristics. With careful inspection and a little knowledge, you can identify coins that others might spend without a second thought. So, the next time you receive change or search through a coin jar, take a closer look at any 1983 Roosevelt dime with a P mint mark. Examine the details. Study the torch bands. Protect high-quality examples, because hidden among millions of ordinary pieces could be one that stands out. And in the world of U.S. coin collecting, the smallest details can make the biggest difference. Coin number 3. Imagine reaching into your pocket and pulling out a 1976 Roosevelt dime with a small D mint mark and realizing that this tiny piece of change could be far more valuable than you ever expected. Most Americans see a dime from 1976 and think it's just another coin from the bicentennial era. But serious collectors know that under the right conditions, the 1976 D. Roosevelt dime can command astonishing prices in the rare coin market. The year 1976 was historic for the United States. The nation was celebrating 200 years of independence. Special bicentennial designs appeared on quarters and half dollars, but the Roosevelt dime continued with its classic design. On the obverse, you'll see President Franklin D. Roosevelt facing left, along with the inscriptions Liberty, Indiana God We Trust, and the date 1976. Just above the date sits the small but important D mint mark, identifying the coin as a product of the Denver Mint. On the reverse, the design remains iconic. A central torch representing liberty, flanked by an olive branch symbolizing peace and an oak branch symbolizing strength. United States of America and one dime frame the design. It's a coin most people have handled countless times without a second thought. But here's what makes this coin truly interesting. The 1976 D. Roosevelt dime was struck in copper-nickel-clad composition, weighing 2.27 grams with a reeded edge. It contains no silver, which leads many to assume it holds no premium value. However, in coin collecting, value is driven by rarity, condition, demand, and unique characteristics, not just precious metal content. More than 695 million 1976 D dimes were minted at Denver. That sounds extremely common. And in circulated grades, it is. Most examples you find in everyday change are worth only face value. But the story changes dramatically when you focus on condition rarity. Because these coins were produced in such high numbers and released directly into circulation, very few were preserved in pristine condition. Over time, dimes from 1976 experienced wear, scratches, bag marks, and dull surfaces. As a result, high-grade mint-state examples have become increasingly difficult to locate. Collectors carefully evaluate these coins under magnification, looking for sharp detail, minimal contact marks, and strong original luster. Coins graded MS66 or MS67 by professional grading services like PCGS or NGC can sell for impressive premiums. The difference between an average uncirculated coin and an elite high-grade example can mean hundreds or even thousands of dollars. One of the most critical factors in determining value is the full bands designation. On the reverse torch, there are horizontal bands across the center. For a coin to qualify as full bands, those lines must be fully separated and sharply defined. Many 1976 D dimes were weakly struck in this area, making fully struck examples scarce and highly desirable. Registry set collectors compete aggressively for the finest known examples. When population reports show only a handful of coins graded at the very top level, demand intensifies. That competition is what pushes auction prices to extraordinary heights. Beyond condition, mint errors also play a significant role in value. The 1976 D. Roosevelt dime has been discovered with off-center strikes, clipped planchets, broad strikes, and doubled die varieties. A doubled die can show noticeable doubling in liberty Indiana God We Trust, or even in the date. Strong examples of these errors can bring substantial premiums. Off-center errors with a visible date are especially popular among collectors. The more dramatic the misalignment while still showing the full date and mint mark, the more valuable the coin becomes. Even subtle strike anomalies can add collector interest. Another overlooked factor is long-term survival in superb condition. Many uncirculated rolls from the 1970s were stored improperly, leading to toning spots, discoloration, and surface damage. Coins that remain bright clean and sharply struck are increasingly scarce decades later. If you're checking your own 1976 D Roosevelt Dime, start with proper lighting and magnification. Tilt the coin slowly and look for strong cartwheel luster, that spinning shine that moves across the surface. Inspect Roosevelt's cheek and jawline, as these high points often show the first signs of wear or contact marks. Then, examine the reverse torch carefully. Clear, distinct band separation is essential for the full band's designation. Never clean your coin. Cleaning can permanently damage the surface and drastically reduce value. Original surfaces are always preferred by collectors and grading services. It's important to understand that while most 1976 D dimes remain common, the highest quality examples exist in extremely limited numbers. As registry competition grows and more collectors pursue top population coins, values for the finest specimens continue to rise. Modern coins are often underestimated. Many people believe only old silver coins or 19th century pieces can be valuable, but modern clad coins in elite condition can be just as rare, sometimes even rarer, because fewer were preserved carefully from the start. Now, here's the number that captures attention nationwide. The highest price ever recorded at auction for a 1976 Roosevelt Dime with a D mint mark is $169,000. That record-breaking sale involved a top-graded, exceptional quality example that stood at the pinnacle of known survivors, proving that even a dime from the bicentennial era can achieve life-changing value under the right circumstances. The 1976 D Roosevelt Dime is a powerful reminder that treasure doesn't always look extraordinary at first glance. Sometimes it's a small, everyday coin hiding in plain sight. By understanding grading standards, strike quality, and error varieties, you place yourself ahead of millions who overlook these details. So, before you spend another 1976 D-Dime, take a closer look. Study the mint mark. Inspect the torch bands. Preserve high-grade examples carefully, because in the world of rare U.S. coins, the smallest details create the biggest rewards, and your next valuable discovery could already be sitting in your change. Coin number 4, what if I told you that a small 1968 Roosevelt Dime with a D mint mark, a coin most Americans wouldn't look at twice, could actually be worth a small fortune under the right conditions? It sounds unbelievable. But in the world of rare U.S. coins and valuable modern dimes, the 1968 D Roosevelt Dime holds surprising potential that collectors across the country actively search for. At first glance, the 1968 D-Dime looks completely ordinary. On the obverse, you'll see the familiar portrait of President Franklin D. Roosevelt, along with the inscriptions Liberty, Indiana God We Trust, and the date 1968. Just above the date is the small but important D mint mark, indicating it was struck at the Denver Mint. On the reverse, the classic torch design is centered between an olive branch and an oak branch, symbolizing peace and strength, surrounded by United States of America and one dime. The 1968 Roosevelt Dime was produced in copper-nickel-clad composition, meaning it contains no silver. It weighs approximately 2.27 grams and has a reeded edge. Because it lacks precious metal content, many people assume it can't possibly be valuable. But in coin collecting, true value comes from rarity, demand, grade, and special characteristics, not just silver content. More than 480 million 1968 D Roosevelt dimes were struck at the Denver Mint. That sounds like an enormous number, and in circulated condition, most examples are indeed common and worth face value. However, high mintage does not automatically mean high survival in top condition. Most 1968 D dimes entered circulation immediately. They were used in everyday commerce, stored loosely in bags, rolled tightly in banks, and handled without care. Over time, contact marks, scratches, and where reduced, the number of pristine examples available today. This is where condition rarity becomes extremely important. In mint state grades, such as MS-65 or MS-66, the 1968 D Roosevelt Dime begins to attract collector attention. But when you move into MS-67 and above, especially with strong eye appeal and minimal imperfections, the coin becomes dramatically scarcer. At the highest levels of grading, population numbers shrink to a tiny fraction of the original mintage. One of the most critical features collectors examine on Roosevelt dimes is the strike quality on the torch bands. These horizontal bands across the center of the torch must be fully separated and clearly defined to receive the full bands designation from professional grading services like PCGS or NGC. Many 1968 D dimes were weakly struck in this area, meaning truly sharp full bands examples are much harder to find than most people realize. Coins that combine high mint state grades with full bands designation are especially desirable in registry set competitions. Advanced collectors compete for the finest known examples, and when population reports show very few coins at the top grade, bidding wars can erupt at auction. Beyond condition, mint errors add another layer of potential value. The 1968 D Roosevelt Dime is known for several collectible error varieties. These include doubled dies, off-center strikes, clip planchets, and strike-through errors. A doubled die can show noticeable doubling in Liberty, Indiana God We Trust, or even in the date and mint mark. The stronger and more visible the doubling, the more desirable the coin becomes. Off-center errors that retain a full, visible date and mint mark can command strong premiums. Clip planchets, where a portion of the coin appears missing due to a cutting error during planchet production, are also highly collectible. These error coins stand out immediately and often bring far more than standard examples. If you want to evaluate your own 1968 D Roosevelt dime for potential value, begin by inspecting the coin under bright lighting. Tilt it slowly and look for original mint luster, that spinning cartwheel effect that radiates across the surface. Check Roosevelt's cheek, jawline, and hair for contact marks, as these areas are focal points in grading. Next, examine the reverse torch carefully. Are the horizontal bands clearly separated? Is the flame sharp and well-defined? Weak strikes are common for this year, so a sharply struck coin is significantly more desirable. Weigh the coin to confirm standard specifications. A typical clad 1968 D dime should weigh approximately 2.27 grams. Significant variation may indicate an error strike, which could increase value. It's also important to emphasize one critical rule in coin collecting: never clean your coins. Cleaning can permanently damage the surface and drastically reduce collector value. Original surfaces with natural toning are always preferred over artificially bright or polished coins. Many collectors overlook coins from the late 1960s because they associate valuable dimes with pre-1965 silver issues. But modern clad coins in elite condition can be just as rare, sometimes even rarer, because fewer people preserve them carefully from the beginning. As registry set participation grows and top population coins become tightly held in advanced collections, the finest examples continue to appreciate. Supply at the highest grades is extremely limited, while demand among serious collectors remains strong. And here is the number that shocks most viewers. The highest price ever recorded at auction for 1968 Roosevelt Dime with a D mint mark is $195,000. That record-setting sale involved a top-graded, extraordinary quality example with exceptional strike and eye appeal, a coin that once looked like ordinary pocket change, but ultimately became one of the most valuable modern Roosevelt dimes ever sold. The 1968 D Roosevelt Dime proves that valuable coins are not always obvious. Sometimes they are hiding in plain sight, in coin jars, old bank rolls, inherited collections, or even everyday change. By understanding grading standards, full bands designation, and error varieties, you dramatically increase your chances of identifying a hidden gem. So, the next time you see a 1968 Roosevelt dime with a D mint mark, don't dismiss it. Take a closer look. Study the details. Preserve high-quality examples carefully. Because in the world of rare U.S. coins, knowledge turns ordinary change into extraordinary opportunity, and your next valuable discovery could already be in your hands. Coin number 5, the 1977 Roosevelt Dime with no mint mark, is one of those coins most Americans have seen countless times. Yet, very few realize how valuable it can become under the right conditions. At first glance, it looks like ordinary pocket change. Franklin D. Roosevelt's portrait appears on the front, the torch with olive and oak branches on the back, and there's no mint mark visible near the date. For many people, that simply means it was struck at the Philadelphia Mint. But in the world of rare U.S. coins, this seemingly common dime has surprising potential. In 1977, the Philadelphia Mint was still producing coins without a P mint mark on dimes. The P mint mark would not appear on Roosevelt dimes until 1980. So, if you have a 1977 dime without a mint mark, that is completely normal for a Philadelphia issue. The coin is composed of copper-nickel clad, 75% copper and 25% nickel bonded to a copper core, and weighs approximately 2.27 grams with a reeded edge. More than 585 million 1977, no mint mark Roosevelt dimes were struck at Philadelphia. On the surface, that large mintage suggests the coin is extremely common, and in circulated grades, it typically is worth face value. However, coin collecting is not only about how many were made, it's about how many survive in top condition today. Most 1977 dimes entered circulation immediately and remained in use for decades. They were stored in cash registers, bank rolls, and coin jars, accumulating where scratches and contact marks. As a result, finding a high-grade, sharply struck example more than 4 decades later is far more difficult than many people expect. Condition rarity is where the value begins to separate ordinary coins from extraordinary ones. In lower mint state grades, such as MS63 or MS64, the 1977 Roosevelt Dime Without mint mark may carry a modest premium. But when you move into MS66, MS67, and above, the number of surviving examples drops significantly. Coins graded at the very top levels by PCGS or NGC are scarce, and scarcity drives demand. One of the most important factors in grading Roosevelt dimes is the full bands designation. On the reverse of the coin, the torch contains horizontal bands across its center. To qualify for full bands, those lines must be completely separated and sharply defined. Many 1977 Philadelphia dimes show weak strikes in this area, making fully struck examples rare and highly desirable. Collectors building registry sets compete for the finest graded examples available. When population reports show only a handful of coins at the highest grade with full bands, competition intensifies. That competition is what transforms an ordinary 10-cent coin into a serious investment piece. Beyond high-grade condition, error coins from 1977 also attract attention. Doubled die varieties may show visible doubling in Liberty, Indiana God We Trust, or the date. Off-center strikes, clipped planchets, and strike-through errors can dramatically increase value depending on severity, and I appeal. A 1977 Roosevelt dime struck off-center with a fully visible date can sell for hundreds or even thousands of dollars depending on the degree of misalignment. Clipped planchet errors, where a curved portion of the coin is missing, are also popular among collectors of U.S. Mint errors. When evaluating your 1977 no mint mark dime, start by examining the obverse under strong lighting. Look closely at Roosevelt's cheek and jawline, as these high points reveal wear and contact marks quickly. Rotate the coin slowly to check for strong cartwheel luster, a sign of original, uncirculated surfaces. Next, inspect the reverse torch carefully. Are the horizontal bands fully separated? Is the strike sharp and crisp? Weakly struck coins are common, so finding a bold strike significantly enhances desirability. Never clean your coin. Cleaning removes original mint luster and can permanently damage the surface, drastically reducing value. Collectors always prefer coins with untouched original surfaces. Although the 1977 Roosevelt Dime Without mint mark is a modern-clad coin, modern does not mean worthless. In fact, many modern coins are rare in top condition precisely because so few are saved carefully when new. Over time, attrition reduces the supply of pristine examples, while demand among registry collectors remains strong. The market for high-grade Roosevelt dimes has grown steadily as more collectors recognize condition rarity. Coins graded at the top of the population reports often bring strong prices at major auctions. When supply is extremely limited and demand is competitive, values can reach levels that surprise even experienced collectors. And here is the figure that truly captures attention. The highest price ever recorded at auction for a 1977 Roosevelt dime with no mint mark is $150,000. That remarkable sale involved an elite, top population example with exceptional strike quality, and I appeal, a coin that once looked like everyday pocket change, but ultimately became one of the most valuable modern dimes ever sold. The lesson is simple, but powerful. Never underestimate a coin based solely on its age or metal content. The 1977 no mint mark Roosevelt dime proves that value lies in condition, rarity, and collector demand. So, before you spend another 1977 dime, take a closer look. Study the details. Examine the torch bands. Protect any high-quality examples you find. Because in the world of rare U.S. coins, a small detail can make a massive difference, and your next valuable discovery could already be sitting in your change. Before you spend another dime, take one last look. Because the truth is, the smallest coins often carry the biggest secrets. And while most people ignore them, a few sharp-eyed collectors are quietly pulling out pieces worth thousands. Imagine tossing away a coin today, only to find out tomorrow it was the one everyone is searching for. That's exactly why you need to stay alert. If this opened your eyes even a little, don't stop here. Hit subscribe right now so you don't miss the next discovery. Drop a like, share this with someone who needs to check their change, and comment below if you've ever found a coin that made you look twice. And whatever you do, don't miss my previous video on Washington quarters. You might already have one of those valuable coins sitting in your pocket right now. Check your change. Stay curious. And never assume a coin is just a coin.